Hey, this is Brian from InVision Studio. Today I wanted to share a quick tutorial about using containers in Studio. Basically, containers give you the ability to have mini artboards inside the larger artboard. I'll be showing you the differences between folders and containers and when to use each one. But first, let's take a look at what we can create with containers. Here's an animated example of what's possible. As you can see, one of the most exciting uses of containers is the ability to use all of the resizing options in animations. If you'd like to follow along, I've attached the studio file below. So let's jump in and see how to use containers. The first thing we need to do is find the container options. So I'm going to select a folder, and then in the top right you can see two buttons, one that says group and one that says container. Group is the default option, and then container is the one that we'll be learning about today. So now, if you look over into the layers panel on the left, you can see when I select container, the folder icon changes to a frame icon. That indicates that you're now working with a container. For now, I'll change it back to groups so we can see what the default resizing options look like. On the left, I have some cards that are already set to container and already have all of the appropriate pinning options defined. The cards on the right don't have any resizing options defined, and they're set as group. You can see a lot of the text breaks and the profile image squashes and stretches. On this second card, you can see that the icons become squashed as well. So now let's update these using containers so they resize properly. First, I'm going to select container, and then we're going to resize it to see what happens. As you can see, the container resizes, but the actual elements don't really change. The first thing I'm going to do is change both the width and height of our background to 100%. Now when I resize the container, you can see that the card resizes as well. For the image, we're going to pin it to the right as well as the left, and we're going to change it to percentage height. And then for the text, we're going to pin it to the right and left as well, but we're going to pin it to the bottom rather than the top. Finally, for our action buttons, we just need to pin them to the bottom. All right, let's check it out. Now moving on to the incoming call card, we're going to start similarly by changing it to container. This time for the background, I'm going to pin the edges to the left and right rather than changing it to 100%. For this divider, I'm going to pin it to left and right and then pin it to the bottom. And then similarly for our buttons, we're going to pin them to the right and to the bottom. And there we go, easily resizable components that can be dropped into any design. So let's see how to animate these. I'm going to copy and paste our card into this empty artboard, and then I'm going to do the same in this one. In the second one, I'm going to resize it up, and actually you can see this big space, so I'm going to make one more change. We're going to pin the image to the top and bottom as well. Now that looks better when we size it up. Now I'm going to go back to the first artboard, press C to create an interaction, and select our second artboard. I'm going to select timer so it happens automatically, select motion, and leave it at the default. Let's hit save, and then do the same with the second artboard, selecting an interaction up in the toolbar, and then selecting the first one. Again, I'm going to select timer and motion. All right, let's check it out. And there we go, our card resizes and animates. So now that you've created your animation using containers, let's review the difference between groups and containers. For groups, everything will scale uniformly when the group is resized. In containers, layers won't resize at all unless you use the pinning options and the percentage options to scale them. In groups, X and Y values will be relative to the artboard. And in containers, they'll be relative to that specific container. And then finally, pinning has no effect on how layers will respond when it's inside of a group. But when it's inside a container, all of the pinning options will be respected and will be relative to the container. If you've used Figma at all, you may have noticed that this is pretty similar to the way that frames work. Essentially, it's a mini artboard inside the larger artboard. The biggest use for this is going to be resizing specific elements inside your artboard. Thanks for tuning in. I'd love to see what you're creating with containers and with InVision Studio in general. Feel free to share anything with me at LearnInVision on Twitter, and if you found this useful, make sure to hit subscribe below. And finally, a huge shout out to Scott from InVision who provided the files that were used in this video.